My friends, every single day someone comes to me and tells me that they have been unsubscribed from my channel without their knowledge. Please make certain that you are still subscribed, and if you have not subscribed, please do so in our ongoing fight to stop corporations from destroying our myths. We need your help. Thank you. Dominions and Dumentites, I have seen Star Trek Picard, Episode 3. It is, as you might expect, a ludicrous and slipshod piece of work devoid of passion, skill, or intelligence, and we'll get to the specifics of how bad this thing is in a few minutes. But in particular, I'd like to call your attention to one specific moment in this episode. A moment that could be easily ignored as mere background, but whose significance cannot really be overstated. There's a moment in Star Trek Picard Episode 2, carried over to Episode 3, that perfectly sums up in a symbolic way just how Kurtzman has perverted and degraded Star Trek. In these episodes, we're introduced to Raffi, a bitter, drunken ex-Starfleet officer who has built her little prefab house directly next to the Vasquez rocks in California. Why this nasty, bruising broad would be allowed to just dump her lousy little shanty right next to a famous landmark is beyond me. It makes about as much sense as some dickhead being allowed to construct a parking garage on the rim of the Grand Canyon. But beyond this being an awful plot point, this is yet another giant gob of spit in the face of Star Trek fandom. The significance of Raffi dumping her prefab hut right next to the Vasquez rocks is striking to me. Striking and abhorrent, in fact, because the Vasquez rocks are a bizarre and alien-looking natural formation outside of Los Angeles that was used in a number of episodes of Star Trek, most notably in the first season classic Arena, in which Captain Kirk fought and defeated the deadly Gorn captain in hand-to-hand combat. This is an iconic Star Trek location. Legendary, really. And so it's particularly fitting and particularly vile that Raffi is living next to it in a shoddy little prefab shack, squatting on sacred ground and defiling it in the process. When you watch the episode, Raffi's crappy trailer home is prominently featured in the foreground of the shot and photographed in such a way that you can hardly even notice the majesty of the Vasquez rocks, stuck in the background and despite their massive size, minimized, trivialized, dismissed. This eyesore construction completely pulls the focus away from the natural beauty of the Vasquez rocks, and this is Kurtzman Trek in a nutshell. A cheap and ugly piece of crap squatting on sacred ground and desecrating it. Kurtzman takes the mythology of Star Trek, the grand architecture of over 50 years of tradition, and erects his prefab knockoff right smack on top of it, leveling the beautiful narrative towers Roddenberry erected with his blood, sweat, and tears, and dumping his own rickety, soulless plastic strip mall on the site, like a sleazy developer who buys an old church just to demolish it and build a parking garage in its place. This is cultural vandalism writ large, taking a work of art and destroying it with one swipe of a red spray paint can. Kurtzman is essentially one of the Joker's minions in the Michael Keaton Batman movie, gleefully cavorting through the museum and mindlessly ruining each and every work of art by tagging it with their graffiti. Kurtzman is not the Joker himself, however. That honor goes to J.J. Abrams, who initiated the destruction of Star Trek in 2009 with the destruction of Vulcan and the creation of the Prime Trek universe, a licensed falsehood pretending to be real Star Trek even as he destroys it. You can trace the ruin of Star Trek from Abrams and Bad Robot to Kurtzman and Secret Hideout. The Vasquez rocks being trivialized by a prefab piece of crap erected next to it is a perfect metaphor for the current state of Star Trek, and it makes me sick. So how was the rest of Star Trek Picard, you ask? It was terrible. Par for the mini golf course. We get a flashback 14 years to the day Picard got fired. Picard emerges from Starfleet headquarters decked out in his formal uniform, and we get one of the clumsiest bits of exposition I've ever seen in Star Trek, recapping a whole lot of crap we already knew. The synths were going to be slave labor to help build the rescue armada to go save the Romulans. Raffi, the chick with the frizzy hair who later becomes a drunk who builds a prefab hut next to the Vasquez rocks, is also a member of Starfleet, also decked out in her formal uniform. And she mentioned she thinks the Tal Shiar were behind the synth attack that destroyed the rescue armada and set Mars on fire. And Picard asks, why would they attack a fleet whose sole purpose was to help the Romulans? And the answer is, the Zhat Vash hate synths and would not welcome synth involvement in a Federation rescue that would influence Romulan public opinion and undo all their work vilifying synthetic life. Isn't that obvious? Note to the so-called Picard writers. Write better, because when you're this obvious, it's painful. The synth attack on Mars is supposed to be a big mystery, but now due to this clumsy scene, I think it's pretty obvious what the big secret behind the attack was. The Zhat Vash, the Romulan secret service that was revealed in episode 2 to hate all forms of synthetic life, could not allow the Federation to rescue Romulans with the aid of androids. This would have been intolerable to the Zhat Vash for two reasons. They don't want relations between the Federation and the Romulan Empire to be repaired, and they certainly wouldn't want the Romulan public to be rescued by androids because that could swing Romulan public sentiment in favor of androids, something the Zhat Vash could not allow. So thanks to clumsy exposition and a fairly obvious plot, I think we probably figured out the big secret behind the synth uprising on Mars. Go Team Kurtzman! So then, in this scene, Picard whines about how Starfleet won't rebuild the 10,000 ship armada and try again, and tells Raffi that they have outlawed and banned all androids. Picard reveals he has resigned from Starfleet and says, I never thought they'd give in to intolerance and fear. Whoa there, bald little doggy. You mean that Starfleet doesn't want to go ahead and waste another bazillion in credits, resources, and lives trying to save the Romulans when they're perfectly capable of saving themselves since they are an empire, not a third world country of ragged boat people, and that Starfleet is maybe thinking, hey, maybe building a slave labor army of androids wasn't such a hot idea after all, especially since we don't know what the hell went wrong with them. Starfleet is wrong not to want another disaster? What an asinine reason to resign. It's absurd. Who is this idiot they're trying to pawn off on us as Jean-Luc Picard? I'll tell you who. Another cheap prefab character built on the grave of Jean-Luc Picard, the living equivalent of a cheap prefab hut built next to the Vasquez rocks. Symbols say a lot, don't they? So this terrible opening scene continues, layering on insult to injury, as we hear Raffi repeatedly call Picard JL. Oh, JL this, oh, JL that. She's so fucking close to him. She's his bestest friend ever. And JL. It's so lovely to hear a character as notoriously dignified and formal as Jean-Luc Picard reduced to the contempt of familiarity. Updated in the same way as KFC or Nat Geo. Oh, it's so fucking hip. It's so mod. It's so swell. Good old JL. I think we have our answer, don't we? It's not Jean-Luc Picard up there. It's JL, the equivalent of Jake Soywoker. Well, that solves that mystery too. Now we know who we're watching. But hell, that's not the funniest part of this awful scene between Picard and Raffi. Raffi is begging Picard. This isn't the end of it. We've got to save the Romulans. We've got to find a way with or without Starfleet. And then she gets a call from Starfleet HQ, and immediately she gets pissed at Picard, saying, "Oh great, now you got my ass canned." And she storms away, never to speak to Picard again. So much for her lofty ideals and concerns for the Romulans. Oh, it literally was like that, folks. JL, we've got to save the Romulans. We can blow off Starfleet, but nothing can stop our mission. Or excuse me, I got a call. What? Oh, no, you didn't. My ass is fired now? Oh, JL, you son of a bitch. Right in hell, mofo. She storms away, doesn't talk to him for 14 years. Yeah, this is what passes for writing on Star Trek Picard. This is what passes for drama. See, Raffi was so angry at Picard that she pulled a rifle on him in episode 2 and told him to piss off when he visited her shanty next to the Vasquez rocks. So the so-called writers had to explain why she was so mad at him that she would pull a gun on him. And they had to do it fast and as clumsily as possible because they didn't really have much time for that. So they manufactured this nonsensical grudge against Picard to explain it. All so we could have the cheap-ass cliched scene of Raffi being a badass and pulling a phaser on Picard and saying, you are not coming back into my life, JL. Hell nah. So why is it Picard's fault that Starfleet fired Raffi? All he did was resign on a silly point of principle that makes no sense, has nothing to do with her. Why did Starfleet fire Raffi at all? She was working on a Starfleet-approved mission, a mission she believed in, that they both believed in. So unless she caused Mars to get set on fire and caused the androids to rebel, her firing makes absolutely zero sense. It's absurd. And even if somehow her firing did make sense, wasn't she just going on and on about how important it is to save the Romulans? That they should do it even without Starfleet? So she believed in this mission 100%, but it's not worth her job to get it done? And she's gonna blame Picard for what Starfleet did to her, and she's gonna walk away after that whole scene where she's going on about we've gotta save the Romulans at all costs, and she's gonna walk away from Picard, and she's gonna walk away from saving the Romulans when it's her job on the line. Jesus. This is the level of nonsensical drivel these contemptible hacks are trying to sell us. This is the atrocious level of writing we're being subjected to. We are collectively being insulted in the most vicious way, not merely as Star Trek fans, but as human beings that value narrative, that care about reason itself. Logic, common sense, literacy, all those noble human attributes it has taken us millennia to cultivate have to be discarded just so we can enjoy a fucking abomination about an old guy and an arboreal Romulan with a fucking sword. Trekkies, they don't get it, because paying attention has never been their strong suit and logic is not a priority. But what greater insult can you apply to a human being than treating them like a moron? This is on a subscription service, people. They are not only treating you like a moron with substandard ratiocination like this, they're charging us for the privilege of abusing us. Does this not make you furious? Then they rub it in our faces some more, with Daj's android sister Suji on the Romulan vessel talking to the emancipated ex-Borg Hugh, talking about therapy for Romulans who have been traumatized and liberated from the Borg collective, and they have the balls to have Suji extol, quote, the therapeutic efficacy of a shared mythological framework. Let me say that again. As therapy for traumatized Romulans, Suji praised, quote, the therapeutic efficacy of a shared mythological framework. Oh, you mean like the mythological framework you secret hideout bastards are destroying? You mean our mythological framework? Could that be any more pointed? Any more insulting? That was aimed directly at us. These scumbags are not ruining Star Trek by accident. They well and truly know that a shared mythology is a part of who we are as a people, and they are deliberately destroying it. This is no accident. This scene is a sly aside, a middle finger and a wry wink at all of us. The symbolism of the Vasquez rocks trivialized. This acknowledgement of the importance of a shared mythological framework for the wellness of people, how more obvious could they be? Star Trek Picard is directly attacking the character of Picard by turning him into a doddering old fool, a pathetic shell of his former self. But even worse, they are finishing the total destruction of Starfleet that Kurtzman began by representing Starfleet as riddled with traitors and Romulan agents, even going so far as to implicate a high-ranking Starfleet admiral in the attack on Mars, stating they allowed it to happen. When Picard in present day tries to recruit Raffi to help him find Data's so-called daughter out in space, Raffi says, no, I will not go down another rabbit hole with you, JL. What rabbit hole? It was an honest mission that Picard initiated to rescue the Romulans, a mission you bought into, Raffi. You both did your best and none of it was his fault, so why are you blaming him? The reason she's blaming him is because the hacks that write this garbage love doing this nonsense. Just like Nero insanely blames Spock for the supernova that destroyed Romulus in Abrams' 2009 abomination, it's the exact same plot. Raffi blames Picard for something not remotely his fault. This is bad robots' modus operandi. Bad writers who make shit happen in scripts not because it makes sense or follows a narrative through line, but because they need it for the story to go forward because they can't make it work otherwise. None of this shit makes any sense at all. There's so much to hate about this episode. This review has gone on long enough. Maybe I'll do another video about this, or maybe I'll do another live stream. But here are just a few little nuggets of suck that stood out for me, okay? Suji and Hugh aboard the Borg cube chat with Rhonda the Romulan. Yes, I'm not kidding. She's a Romulan named Rhonda. And Rhonda the Romulan is kind of a spaced out chick from being rescued from the Borg. And she tries to kill Suji at one point when she snaps out of her trance, saying, Suji is the destroyer, which is the same thing a captured Romulan says in Picard's living room. Oh yes, I forgot to say it before. One of the worst parts of this horrible episode was, another team of special op Romulans attack Picard and his house Romulans. Picard, when they attack, cowers behind a table while his house Romulans fight for him. But then he gets enraged and attacks one of the special op Romulans with his wooden cane. With his cane. He whacks a Romulan op, a special op guy in armor and stuff, with his cane. Get off of my lawn, you damn Romulans. Of course, the Romulan just hands him his ass, throws him down on the ground. He still doesn't break a hip. But see, then, all of a sudden, his Romulan housekeepers pull phasers from holsters hidden under furniture around the room and shoot the Romulan interlopers. And Picard pulls a phaser from under the table and shoots Romulans, which begs the question, if Picard knows there are emergency phasers hidden around the room, why the fuck does he attack the Romulans with his cane? Oh my God, you cannot make this shit up. Picture this. His house Romulans, his domestics, are fighting the evil special op Romulans, and Picard is cowering behind the table and whimpering. I actually think I heard him whimper. Seemingly the very table that had the hidden weapons. But he doesn't go for the hidden phaser. He uses his cane. Is this Jean-Luc Picard? Are you kidding me? And again, I cannot say it often enough. Regardless of whether they're trying to kill Picard or capture him, how come they beam in strike teams instead of just beaming Picard out? Time and time again, we have this same idiotic scene of professional Romulan strike teams getting their asses handed to them, by domestics and girls and old men, and time again they don't do the obvious thing and just beam their targets out. Beam them into space to die or into a brig to be interrogated, but these repeated scenes are stupid action filler. And it's only gonna get worse. Say farewell to the best of Picard, people, because it's fixing to get much, much worse. My source tells me that Picard episodes 1 through 3 were designed to fool people into thinking this show is not Star Trek Discovery and is in fact in the Star Trek universe. But according to the rumor, and please treat it as such, after episode 3, Kurtzman is yanking all the stuff that Chabon licensed from CBS to make Picard seem more like Star Trek. According to my source, Kurtzman is stripping Picard of all licensed Star Trek items from episode 4 forward to save Secret Hideout the licensing fees. So what you've just seen in episode 1 through 3 is the best Picard you're gonna get. And it won't ever be that good again. So set phasers to suck and buckle in, gang. The ride gets bumpy from here.